The year is 1590. Finally, after 3 years, John White returns to govern the island of Roanoke. As he touches his feet on dry land, he notices no one is there to greet him and that it's awfully quiet. He and his men walk to the nearby settlement only to discover no one is there. All that remains are the buildings empty of its former inhabitants. The only sign of life was on a nearby fence post which marked the word Croatoan. The Lost Colony would become America's first great mystery, and we will discuss on this episode of The Amateur Historian. Hello everyone and welcome to the first episode of The Amateur Historian. I'm your host, Michael McDonald, and before we get started today, I would just like to thank you, the listener, for tuning in. The reason you're probably here is because you have a mild interest or fascination in history. I myself do have that interest, but by no means consider myself a scholar. I just wanted to make a platform for me and future guests to talk all things history. With that, let's get into today's story. Our story begins over 10 years prior to the events of the Lost Colony. In 1578, Queen Elizabeth I grants a charter of the New World to Sir Humphrey Gilbert, who is by now a famed British explorer. Gilbert, who is close to the Queen, accepts and prepares an expedition to the New World. Sadly, Gilbert would never make it due to his untimely death in 1583. The Queen then splits the charter between Gilbert's brothers. The brother we will be focusing on is Gilbert's half-brother, Walter Raleigh. He would be tasked personally by the Queen to explore lands north of Spanish Florida in hopes of finding a suitable location for a privateer base. The only catch was he has till 1591 to find a permanent colony, or his charter would be revoked. In 1584, Raleigh would quickly put together a small crew of men to scout out locations along the American coast. Raleigh tasked Captain Philip Armis and Arthur Barlow to lead the 2-month-long journey to the Americas. After a few months away, the two returned with a safe location on Roanoke Island, located in the modern-day Outer Banks. Queen Elizabeth was amazed by the findings that was brought back and knighted Raleigh and deemed him governor of Virginia. And of course, Virginia wasn't what the size it was today. It was a much bigger section, probably consisting of Virginia, Maryland, and North and potentially South Carolina. In April of 1585, Raleigh officially gave the go-ahead to send a large group of people to colonize the land. Most of them were soldiers due to the fact that the Spanish had a large military presence in the area. This time Raleigh put in charge his cousin, Sir Richard Grenville, to set up the colony. Once they made land, the colonists built forts and living quarters for the new residents. Later that year, supplies were running low, so Grenville decided to leave for England to get more supplies. He left in charge a man by the name of Ralph Lane with 107 others to defend the colony. With that, the colony only got worse. Disease spread rapidly, and food shortages were the new normal. Lane would only make matters worse by being violent towards local natives for food. In return, those tribes would attack the remaining group until it was decided by Lane to evacuate the island in 1586. As luck would have it, famous privateer Sir Francis Drake was scheduled to make a supply stop at the island while on his way back to England. A few weeks later, Grenville did return, not knowing that Lane and the 107 men had left. He decided to leave all the supplies that he brought back from England and 15 men to hold the position before the next wave of colonists would arrive. A year later, in 1587, Raleigh wanted to try again to create a successful colony. In May, the expedition parted from Plymouth en route to Roanoke. Their leader this time was in the hands of John White, along with his family and 150 other settlers, this time including women and children. The 2-month-long journey went well for the group as they arrived on the island safely. White and a few others disembarked to hopefully find the 15 men that was left behind by Grenville's expedition. Unfortunately, inside the fort, they only found the remains of one soldier, while the others could never be recovered. It is most likely that those men were either killed by native attacks, or a group of them tried to explore the surrounding islands to find supplies, but never returned. The rest of the colonists would later embark to repair the damaged fort and town. On a lighter note, on August 18th, Eleanor Dare, who was the daughter of John White, gave birth to her first child, Virginia. Virginia would end up being the first English person born in the New World. Later that month, the colony experienced supply troubles and needed resources. John White was asked to return to England to gain the necessary supplies. He left on August 27th, and that would be the last time White would ever see his family. White reached England on November 5th, but arrived at a worse time. War with Spain was about to break out as the Spanish Armada was heading for the English shores. Queen Elizabeth needed every ship in England to fight the threat. White begged the Queen to go back to Roanoke, but she would say no, forcing White to fight with the Royal Navy. 3 years later, war ended, and White was able to get a ship to go back to the colony, with help from Raleigh. The ships he acquired were the Hopewell and Moonlight, and they sailed across the Atlantic and arrived on Roanoke Island on August 18th, which was Virginia's 3rd birthday. White came ashore and quickly went to the town to find it empty. To him and his crew's surprise, not a single soul was there. White searched the town but saw no evidence of a fight or struggle. It was like they just disappeared into thin air. They did, however, find 2 clues, one carved in a tree that said Crow, and the other a fence post that said Croatoan. White assumed they went to the neighboring island of Croatoan and wanted to go there. Unfortunately, on their way over, a storm came through, preventing them from ever going. He was then forced to return to England and would never know what happened to his family. No one returned to the island until Walter Raleigh decided he wanted to see if he could find the missing colony himself. He departed in 1602 but never made it due to a freak storm. He would also never make it to the New World before his death in 1618. But once Jamestown was an established colony, rumors started to float around. In 1607, settlers heard a story from a local native speaking of another tribe about how European-looking people lived with them. This was never confirmed by the English, but another rumor grew. John White, who returned with the Jamestown colony, was in a conversation with Chief Powhatan. He told John that he killed a group of European settlers for choosing to live with an enemy tribe. Again, this couldn't conclude if it was true or not. Other theories state that famine or disease wiped out the colony, but that wouldn't explain why they couldn't find remains. Another wild theory is that a tribe of natives who were cannibals attacked the island, but it was confirmed that later on there was no such evidence of a cannibal tribe in the area of the Outer Banks. A final theory came hundreds of years after the colony was lost. In 1937, Lewis E. Hammond came across a stone with Old English writing on it. He located it along the Chowan River in North Carolina. The stone was signed by Eleanor Dare, again, who was the daughter of John White, and it had 2 things on it. The one side stated how her husband and daughter had passed away, and on the other side of the stone, it said 7 of the original colonists were alive and the rest died by natives. The stone also requested that to whoever found it to tell her father what happened. To this day, the historians claim that this stone is authentic, but after its discovery, a total of 47 fake stones emerged. The original has lost some authenticity due to this. Still to this day, it is undetermined on what happened to the lost colony. There are still groups today that are searching to bring an end to this long mystery. It's only a matter of time before we really know what happened to the lost colony. Thank you again for tuning in. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to be up to date on new episodes. As always, I'm Michael McDonald, and this is The Amateur Historian, signing off.